Okay, folks, we're going to kick off at that. I think I would say more than enough for a quorum. So listen, you're all very welcome to our second Lunch and Learn series for MMC Ireland. Today's topic is around the whole issue of AI and how it's been currently is being, or that companies in future can start to harness it in the manufacturing and offsite construction industries. So what do we hope to try and cover today? So we'll just do a quick few introductions in a minute in terms of who's going to be speaking. We'll ask you to do a wee bit of work, so we'll add a wee interactive element to this in terms of to sort of gauge not just the viewers today, but obviously everybody's working within the offsite or the MMC industry. So it'll be a bit of a sense check in terms of the levels of AI adoption in the industry and your own perceptions and concerns, possibly. We'll then introduce you to our first speaker, Mark Flynn from Rubiktech. He will talk about AI technology solutions currently available and been rolled out across manufacturing and construction businesses. We'll then listen to Jakub Urbanczyk. I can apologise, Jacob, if I've mispronounced that, from Cairn Homes. So he is, I don't know, okay, I was stumbling midway through there, pulled it out. So how AI is driving continued growth at Cairn. And then we'll finish off on the topic of AI aversion, if you haven't already heard about it, and industry governance as people become more increasing their use and becoming aware of the various potential of it, but there is a risk around that, and we'll share a very recent case study on that. And then we'll open the floor out to a few bit of Q&A for anything that comes up over the course of the day. So in terms of who's going to be speaking today, I'll get Paul Tierney just to say a quick hello and introduction on behalf of MMC Ireland. Then we have Mark, myself, and I'll be facilitating the discussion today, and Jacob. So Paul, if you want to just maybe on behalf of MMC Ireland, sort of welcome everybody and maybe give them a bit of insight into what the Lunch and Learns aim to serve for the clients and members and as part of the working group itself.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dick. So firstly, welcome to everybody. Thank you, Dick, for putting this together today, and Anna for coordinating everything and getting the members invited and other third parties. So just for those who don't know what our Lunch and Learn is, this is the second in our series of monthly Lunch and Learns, presented by members of MMC Ireland. The key topic and the only requirement we ask of our members when presenting these Lunch and Learns is that people who sign up to these and give up their time leave having learned something. They are specifically not case studies of how wonderful some of our members are. They are purely to do with what's happening in the industry, what innovative processes, systems, techniques are ongoing and are being undertaken by our members. And hopefully people leave our session having asked and received answers to questions they have, and have actually left with actually learning something. So we have a number of these scheduled for the next number of months. The first one kicked off last month. We had some great feedback from VBC. I'm very happy and keen to see Dick's presentation with his guests, Mark and Jacob. And welcome everybody, and hopefully you enjoy the next hour. So Dick, over to you, and many thanks for putting this together.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, for those of you that were on a couple of weeks ago, BBC set a very high bar, so we'll aim to try and meet that, but we'll do our best. So again, quick introduction to myself and Clerkin for those of you who we haven't met. So we set up Clerkin about what's that now, 6 years ago, working in the MMC building products and high tech construction. So again, it's everything from strategic growth planning, digital transformation, OpEx, change management. We're very agnostic around MMC. We work with clients across all aspects of it, but it's all about trying to drive growth and through various people, processes and systems. So again, we've been a member of MMC Ireland for the last 2 or 3 years, and I've chaired the head of the education working group. So again, delighted to be able to speak to you on behalf of both Clerkin, but also MMC Ireland. Okay, so kick things off. As I say, I want you to get into your phone. Okay, so some of you might be familiar with Mentimeter. If you can just go into your browser, type in www.menti.com, and it'll ask you for a code. Okay, so if you want to put that code in, that's a good way to just, with a few people, latecomers coming in as well. So 13429138, and it should ask you for the first question: what percentage of the population trust AI. That's based on a recent Forbes survey. Yep. So ping in your answers there. It should be on a sliding scale. There we go. Okay, the answer is 48. All right. Next one up. So what percentage of job types are at high risk to AI impact? So all job types. So it's not just white collar, blue collar, based on recent Forbes survey. Okay, very good. So the answer is 40%. Okay, not as many as we might think, but I think that's growing all the time as I suppose companies adopt AI, they see the benefits of it, and obviously the technology develops, which we're going to hear about very soon. Okay, so again, keep that application open on your phone. Be a few more coming in now in a wee minute. But I just want to get it on to our first speaker. Okay, so our first speaker I'm glad to introduce is Mark Flynn. He is MD of Rubiktech, who are a digital partner of Clerkin and one of the leading technology solutions advisors in the country island of Ireland at the minute. So Mark, if you can jump in there, I'm going to control your screen, but I'll work through your slides. So Mark's going to take us through a few quite a bit in Mark's presentation, so we'll hold questions and answers to the end if anyone wants to come back and any queries, or else we can follow up. Is that all right? Hand it over to you, Mark.
Thanks very much, Dick. Next slide, please. Folks, as Dick said, we are a proud partner of Clerkin Consulting. We help Dick on some of his clients' digital transformations journey. In addition to that, we are a partner to Sage and Procore and Tulip, which are the leading products in the ecosystem for driving early adoption of AI. Today, I kind of want to just take you on a whistle-stop tour through some of the use cases that we're seeing in the market for other construction, MMC, or manufacturing companies are using AI to drive benefits in their organization. It will be a whistle-stop tour. There is lots to talk about, but I believe Dick will be sending all these slides after, and I'm happy to have any conversations offline. Next slide, please. So the first real use case that we see AI being applied to is this concept of signals intelligence and research. And a lot of companies are using these to kind of capture data that's in the internet relevant to sales opportunities or research and development or technical development of products. So what AI is very good at is the capturing and assimilation of data on a grand scale and being able to summarize it into human readable form. So if you think about all the different opportunities that might be coming up for your business around, new tenders or changes in product specification or changes in planning, AI is kind of capable of listening for those types of signals and consolidating it down into a summary and a set of actions that you and your team can take forward. So signals intelligence and research is the first kind of real world use case that you should think about when coming to use AI. Next slide, please. And then following on from that, we're also seeing kind of real world use of AI in tendering and bid management. And this goes beyond just the kind of natural use of ChatGPT to write a standard response to a question, which in many ways can be as dangerous as it can be helpful, which Dick is going to talk about later on this presentation. But there are tools coming to market like AutoGen and Responsive that combine that natural ChatGPT, large language model, transformer type capability to applying that to your documentation and your specific ways of doing business through a document library or an SOP. So if you think about having a database of all your best bids and all your technical information and your boilerplate material, and then being able to use a closed loop AI, so one that's not going to spread your information out further than your organization, to read that information and respond to tender questions. That's a real world use of how you can drive efficiency, increase winnability, and increase standardization within your organization. So tendering and bid management is definitely something to keep an eye on. Next slide, please. Next slide, sorry, Dick.
Yeah, going through now. Sluggish, yep.
Sluggish. Estimating and takeoff. So this is very much in an early adopter stage, but you know, the likes of Autodesk and Procore and OpenSpace, as you would expect, are kind of leading the way on the ability to provide a 2D image and be able to automatically estimate and take off from that image, and also, you know, use cost benchmarking and margin optimization routines to make sure that, you know, you are costing your bids to maximize your profit or maximize your winnability. So still in the early stages, or at least in the early stages that I've seen, but you can expect in the next kind of coming years, or maybe even as low as next 18 months, to start to see these types of tools and technologies automate at least to 80% accuracy the estimating and takeoff process, and the ability to upscale kind of 2D images, kind of 3D BIM files, and begin to address that long-term issue of having to redraw 2D images in 3D and in BIM. So I mean, certainly an interesting area to keep an eye on, and certainly keep an eye on the big vendors, because they'll be the ones kind of driving transformation in this space.
Yeah. Just on that, Mark, I suppose this area is where I would see an example that AI solutions, this whole thing of it's going to displace people. There's a massive dearth of talent and skills in the construction space in the areas of QS, estimate, and technical, and this is where I see the potential for AI to plug that gap. So it's not necessarily displacing people, it's actually plugging a gap, because it's so hard to find and keep people in this area of the business. So it'd be interesting to see how fast this arguably more difficult aspect of AI evolves, because I think everybody's waiting to see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to think about it is it's a tool. It won't really displace or replace anyone in the short to near term, but it will make folks more efficient. So, you know, where you used to have a spade or a shovel, you know, I have a digger. You know, that's the type of thing you should be thinking about. And to your point, there is a massive gap in capability in some of these areas, and AI is plugging the gap. Next up, kind of following on from estimate and takeoff, is design. So Autodesk in particular are spearheading the future of what they call generative design. So the ability to use previous design strategies and design templates and design libraries to, interpret I suppose an architect's vision and begin to design that out, or at least work in tandem with architecture and design teams to increase the speed at which designs can be formulated, and do all those kind of good things that you would expect around clash detection, and the ability to then kind of forecast what the workload might be to deliver that design off the back of that. So again, design is an area that is up and coming, and definitely keep your eyes on the likes of Autodesk and Hyper for design automation. Next up, please. Planning and scheduling. So this is a little bit more mature. So this kind of lends itself into the concept of digital twin, if you're familiar with that, where you create a digital model of your construction site or your construction plan, and you use these type of tools to scenario plan and forecast through that. So the ability to kind of test alternative sequences for, applying trades on stage, or, applying deliveries or building different elements. I think this will be particularly applicable in the MMC space, particularly any kind of modular providers where you're working hand in hand with your general contractor to schedule out your deliveries and schedule out your production, to optimize for not only the build but also for the suppliers. Next up, please, Dick. Construction management. So this is technology that is here today. So these are kind of chatbot interfaces to your information. So if you're using a system like Procore or Autodesk or Trimble, they will be bringing out these type of chat interfaces that allow you to get access to your information in a faster way. So it increases your efficiency as a construction manager or a QS or an estimator to find the information you need, or at least highlight correlations of information that you might miss as part of your kind of risk analysis process. So this is definitely something to look out for today, and is kind of widely in use in a number of organizations.
So just to visualize that, or for companies that maybe haven't seen this, so in practical terms, are we talking about, say, a project manager, health and safety advisor, somebody out remotely that they can go into an application on their phone and simply have a simple prompt or request to get a document or an SOP, and that it'll be able to find it immediately, as opposed to them having to search on the database or SharePoint drives? It'll just come to them immediately. Is that the sort of very quick and simple ways that these types of tools will add value, Mark?
Absolutely, yeah. Real-time, natural language, conversational access to your data.
Very, very straightforward in many ways, because these are the real practical issues that you see people on site. It's actually having to spend an awful lot of time and effort, and ultimately money in terms of resources, trying to find documentation. So obviously these are very simple practical applications. Very good. Okay, safety and compliance.
Yeah, so a well-developed space, as you would expect. So the kind of AI component that drives this is something that's called computer vision. So the ability for a system to detect patterns in real time. So you see some folks deploying this out on site for PPE compliance detection. So making sure that folks are wearing the right type of equipment whenever they're on site, or even real-time monitoring of hazardous areas, or real-time monitoring of movement and behavior on site. So I think the natural evolution of this is going to be, safer construction sites, safer working practices, and also obviously it will then lead on to kind of enhanced efficiency and effectiveness. So it's a well-developed space and something that you should be considering today. It's a great application of AI.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. Sorry.
But yet, Mark, I'm smiling to myself just at the image that you're using. There's some might argue there's almost a dystopian element to that. I'm thinking of almost like Squid Games, that there's some big brother watching, and that's probably one of the challenges technology has, that trust. And yes, the information is very powerful, but I'm just looking at this poor man in the right hand corner with the red box over his head. What might happen to him in future? But yeah, as I say, it's fascinating to learn about that. Yeah.
And the last kind of real world use case, I suppose, is financial management. So all the kind of leading finance platforms will have a similar type of chatbot interface as the likes of the construction management tools do. So the ability to kind of ask natural language questions of how your projects are performing, or where your cash is at, or even use this concept of outlier detection, where it begins to know your different project profiles and the different stages they're at, and the different margins that they should be at, and what should be, what the committed cost is going to be at different stages, and begin to proactively notify you at a management level, or even in aggregate up to a senior management level, whether it sees a pattern of something that's going to happen. So the ability to detect outliers and kind of forecast issues or potential issues in the future, which I think you'll all agree in a cash intensive industry is a pretty key capability that you would want to have. And this exists today in any of the kind of major finance platforms. Next slide, please, Dick. And then many, the majority of you, I assume, are kind of, used to and have experience of site automation and drones. You're beginning to see them everywhere, particularly for site survey up here at the top left, and in the middle there at the bottom, the autonomous safety and security drones. They're both really prevalent in a lot of sites that I'm working on, but you're now starting to see some real innovation in this space, whether it's putting automation into groundwork vehicles and having them kind of clear away and do grounds work automatically, all the way up to humanoid laborers, which 18 months ago was probably a bit of a pipe dream, but the reality is you now start to see some of these humanoid laborers in some of the most advanced factories, whether it's Amazon or BMW, and I don't think it'll be too long before we start to see some of these actually applied on some construction sites. So a really interesting space, and all of them powered by AI.
Yeah, I think that segues into Jakub, our next speaker, who's going to show us a wee bit more depth of how Cairn are deploying some of this technology. So be very interested to learn about that.
Yeah, and just quickly to close, I mean, the latest craze, if you have it in AI, is what's called AI agents or agentic AI. So if you think about all those capabilities that I've just talked through, they will now be kind of found within a kind of single agent or a team of agents within your organization that can receive information from its human supervisors and go off and kind of automate and do tasks of its own merit, and it can work and delegate tasks to other humans or other bots. It can use the tools that you have available within your it can access memory. So a good example of this is, maybe someone that's running a tender and having to, liaise with a number of different sources and people to pull that tender information together. Or, in the most extreme examples, it could be someone supporting a construction manager. It could, in some ways take over some aspects of the site foreman and kind of negotiate and do all the kind of administrative burden tasks in the background to support them, to give them more time ultimately to focus on higher value activities. So keep your eye out for agentic AI. And then lastly, all this technology is great, but the reality is a lot of the organizations that we're in today just aren't in a position to leverage it. So there is a roadmap of how you get there, and that it requires a number of different foundational steps. The first is you need a good finance platform or an ERP platform that's in the cloud that allows it to connect to everything. You need a good operational technology, whether it's Trimble or Procore or Autodesk, whatever it is, something that allows your construction teams to interact in a cloud-based environment. You need clean, readily available data that the AI can then use to kind of drive things forward, and then you can get there. So there is a journey that you need to go on. So if you want to get the advantages and the benefits of AI, make sure that you're talking internally about putting these things in place.
Yeah, and I suppose we could have a whole separate, and we might at some stage on it has always been thus before AI, be it BIM or just general digital transformation, the change management process. It's one thing having the opportunity or the potential up there, and even I'm sure people have seen some of the opportunities that we've gone through and say, God, we'd love to have that. That's exactly what we'd want. Actually, to get from where you are to the point that's embedded is not always straightforward, and there's a lot of not just technological impasses, Mark. It's very much on the human side around change management and getting people to move from something that has always been thus. So people sometimes underestimate, I find, that aspect of digital transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. So folks, that's a whistle-stop tour of a topic that I could talk for days on. If you'd like to follow up on any of that, you could contact me directly or contact me through Dick. I hope you find that educational and informative. Thank you, Dick.
Thank you very much, Mark. And just when some of that's fresh in your mind, if you have any questions you'd like us to ask Mark at the end, drop them into the chat on the meeting there, and we'll fire them back out. So just before we go on to our next speaker, sort of getting a sense of what's available and what is been used and rolled out in some companies. I want to get a bit of a sense of yourselves and your own organization. So if you go back into your Menti app, we're going to get a sense of where you feel, and we'll also get a sense of the industry itself, where we're at the minute. Okay. Couple of questions. All right, so there should be a fresh one up. So in terms of the standard language models like ChatGPT, Copilot, what would you say your current use is? So this is on you personally. I've not used it. I'd say that might, whoever's in the room with that might have changed by the end of the day after what we talk about. But it's still very insightful for those who are on the left-hand side of the page that they wonder why is nobody dabbling at least in it at the minute. But it just shows you new technologies, they do take time to get rolled out across. Okay, so as you would have expected, it's more leaning to the left-hand side. But still, there's people who are still sort of maybe a wee bit apprehensive or looking from the outside in, or there's a lack of trust around it, which we'll touch on in a wee minute now as well. Okay, we have a few people still to vote in. Okay, so that's the majority of people in. Don't think we're probably going to get a whole change to the balance. But again, that's sort of insightful. So those of you that have been using it quite frequently over the last while, you might think, God, everybody's at this. But it shows you that it's steadily increasing, but it's not fully embedded yet. Next question. So in terms of your business that you're aware of, where do you see your business are currently using or at least exploring AI applications? So you can pick, I think, up to 3 responses on this. Again, if you can't answer it, don't. As I say, don't be throwing something in just for the sake of it. It's a case of just to get a good understanding, yeah, as I would suspect, more on the admin HR side of things. Anybody is late to join, you can catch what's going on here. If you went to your phone browser at menti.com, and there's a code that you'll ask for us 1342938. You can join in. Okay, that's interesting. It's interesting now that site operations is sort of on the lower side, because we're going to hear a use case in a minute now from Cairn, who are really starting to see benefits there. But again, as you'd expect, admin HR, which sort of probably ties into just using our language models, quite high, but interesting to see design and technical is up there as well. Okay, so that gives you a bit of a snapshot in terms of current adoption. Have we actually one more? Let me check. Yes, sorry. So the last one then, what level of AI maturity would you rate your organization? So we've sort of 4 grades. Awareness, so that's sort of for dabbling at best, but it's experimentation. So you have small teams that actually have invested or purchased a bit of software and application, but they're just doing it locally. Adoption, so you have some that are, if you're a company that's been readily used by departments and the benefits have been realized, so you're sort of beyond that pilot phase. Or integration, so you're well down the tracks in terms of it's right across the business, and it's a sort of a strategic priority for the business to not just embed what you have, you're looking ahead to see what's next. Okay, yeah, so this was, as you'd expect, everyone's sort of in the early stages. So it just shows you with all the technology and all the applications that Mark touched on there, we're really only scratching the surface, as you'd imagine. So the opportunity is massive still out there for people. Excellent. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to move on and introduce you to our next speaker, Jakub from Cairn. Jakub, are you with us? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Jakub, I can, loud and clear.
Perfect.
So I'm going to hand the screen over, and I'll bounce through your slides if you just call when you need to move on.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Well, hello everyone. My name is Jakub. I work as digital construction manager for Cairn. Thanks a lot for invite here, Dick, and I'm happy to present to you. I'm going to start with just a bit about Cairn. We're one of the largest developers in the country with a continuous 32% growth annually since 2020. We are actively working on a number of innovation projects in the business. Those innovations are, I suppose, focused on the construction products, construction methodologies, and digital innovations. And over the last few years, we've noticed that we are more and more invested into digital innovations. And through our innovations, we managed to reduce our carbon footprint across all projects, be much more efficient with the design thanks to our automated design toolkits. We've rolled out passive apartments at scale across the country. So yeah, there is a lot going on in the business. What I'm going to go through today is the 4 tools that we're currently experimenting with in the business. Being open and honest, we're at the experimentation phase. So in our innovation pipeline, every project that goes through it essentially goes through idea stage, concept, due diligence, road testing, before it goes live at the last stage. So all those 4 tools are currently in the concept experimentation, but we are seeing that those technologies are very promising. So yeah, next slide, please. So I'll start with something that Mark mentioned in slides earlier around, I suppose, chatbots, co-pilots that are baked into existing platforms. So we are currently migrating our business common data environment into Procore. And so Procore is currently releasing in a beta test a co-pilot. And the co-pilot is something like you would know as a ChatGPT, with a difference that co-pilot is plugged into your project data. So taking into account that RCD is essentially a repository of all project-related documents, drawings, technical submittals, specs, and we are also integrating our full quality system into the platform. There is plenty of data that is already landing in their own live projects and will land in there in the future. And so it's a huge miss not to leverage that data, especially when Procore is providing a database that's very structured for holding data. So if we just look at the challenges, obviously trying to find information in CDE can sometimes take a lot of time. And very often, even though we have a lot of information in our CDE, really our project information is in there, we still don't see the risk, certain performance trends.
I don't know. Can we just mute, please? If you've just joined the call, can you just mute? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So in terms of the use cases for that, obviously we've got enhanced search capabilities. So we have a chatbot in Procore. You can just prompt a question like you can see in the image, and it's going to give you a response related to your question. What you have to keep in mind, same with ChatGPT, your prompt is the king here. So be as accurate, as precise as possible with what you want. Obviously, we have instant document retrieval and summarization via this Copilot in Procore. In the future, short-term future, actually, on the roadmap of Procore is release of AI agents. So this is where people will be able to automate certain routine workflows in the platform and essentially teach the agent how to do certain activities. And obviously the last one, which is a very big one, considering you store all your project data in that platform, predictive risk analysis and insights into what's going on with the project. So shortly, in terms of benefits you can get out of this technology, is the time savings in searching for information or doing repetitive tasks. You can improve your decision making through real-time insights and improve your productivity looking for information. So that's I suppose the first use case. The second one is focus on health and safety. So what we are currently, I suppose, piloting, experimenting with is a is a feature that was released around 8 to 9 months ago in the platform called Drone Deploy. Drone Deploy is a platform that we are using to capture and host geospatial data from all of our projects. And these are aerial maps of our sites, but also 360 walkthroughs through our buildings internally. And so the introduction of this tool in Drone Deploy allows us to plug into information that we're already capturing and analyze it with a health and safety lens on top. So in this case, the challenge essentially is that we want to be best in class in terms of health and safety in our sites, but we have limited health and safety managers and they cannot be everywhere at the same time. Therefore, this tool helps us, or we're hoping for it to help us as we are in the experimentation stage, to identify health and safety risks. The way that works, if you, for instance, walk your site with a 360 camera, automatically capturing 360 photos of every single apartment or externally, once that information is uploaded to the platform, there is a health and safety large language model that's been trained on American safety standards and European safety standards. It's analyzing the imagery captured, identifying potential health safety risks. And you can, for instance, see some of the examples. These are examples not directly from Cairn, they are from Drone Deploy. You can see examples of types of risk at the bottom right image, what types of risks you can capture. So automatic check, daily site monitoring, trend analysis of your health and safety issues on site, and historical analysis as well, where it can help you a lot, obviously reduce unsafe conditions. The big win is being able to analyze entire portfolio, so you can see certain types of risk occurring on every project, and then you can target those risks during safety talks, toolbox talks on your sites. And obviously the last thing for us, it's very important, we didn't want it to add additional work burden onto our health and safety managers. This technology essentially add-on feature, so we are walking our sites and capturing 360 imagery of them regardless. For our own purposes, this tool just takes that imagery and analyzes it and provides us with additional set of information about what we've captured.
Fascinating. Just a query on that. So obviously how you assess it, you see the box there, safe, unsafe, that's against a specific standard. You mentioned it's against the US standard. So is that able to interpret the wording of the standard and match it against its visuals to determine whether it's safe or unsafe, or do you have to visualize the standard to correlate it against it? I'm curious on that one.
Yes.
Okay.
So essentially, I probably won't be visible in the bottom image there where you have a photo of the false risk. At the bottom, you wouldn't be able to read that, but essentially would tell you what is the risk exactly and against which part of the regulation it refers to. And now this platform embedded a large language model trained on European standard, including Irish standard. So it's available in Ireland.
Excellent.
And then similar additional feature through Drone Deploy, in our case, is a progress analysis. The way that works is you mark up, if we start on the top image, you mark up certain areas on your site externally. So you can see locations marked up on the latest drone map, or you can do it internally. And then at the time your latest drone survey lands in the platform, it's analyzed automatically via that large language model, via that engine, to spot certain work package progress, and you can narrow down which work packages you want to track. And you can see, I suppose, those work packages at the bottom right in this, I suppose, dark image. In wall insulation, wall drywall, overhead plumbing. It works similarly for interior. If you capture 360 images of your interior of the building, those images are analyzed against the packages, and your progress is being produced automatically for you. So again, if you work on the large scale projects, when we see increased number of apartments being built, it's very difficult to track the progress if you have 5 apartment blocks, 6, 7 story each. So you have that limited visibility on the progress, and that's one of the challenges. And obviously there are risks of the work slippage and delays. Well, we are flying our sites with drone every week, regardless whether we want to track progress or not. We've been doing it for over a year and a half now, and we are capturing interior with 360 camera regardless. So this is just additional nice to have feature that we are actually trying to leverage now to track the progress, whether it's daily or weekly. And main thing, it's very easy to use. It does not require to do any additional work to capture the imagery. So that's another one. And the last one is more on like a personal productivity, and something I thought it would be worth just mentioning here too. I'm sure a lot of you are already using, whether it's a Copilot or ChatGPT, but just purely focusing on Microsoft Copilot. It's a essentially tool that's integrated into Microsoft Office 365, that essentially has access to certain information from your 365 subscription. If you do have full license for Microsoft Copilot, that's where I suppose the joy begins, because then it's integrated with your mailbox, with your calendar, with your SharePoint, with your OneDrive. So you can start working properly with a Copilot and with your business data. So I suppose I'll start with the use cases. In this case, automated meeting summaries. I've noticed this meeting is recorded and there's AI note taker included, right? So that AI note taker is taking essentially transcript at the end of the meeting. They can go into that note taker and ask questions about, well, first of all, he's going to get a summary of the whole meeting. But he can ask questions about what's been agreed, what's been discussed, what are the actions. So that's, I suppose, use case number one. Second is smart email drafting and summarization. Let's say you have a very, very long email thread in your Outlook. You just want a high-level recap of what's happening and what's the next step. You can easily get that done with Copilot because it's integrated with your Outlook. Obviously, language translation, if you're working on international projects and sometimes there are parts of an email in different languages, you can get it easily translated. Document and content creation really is very good. So short summaries in a Word document or a PowerPoint slide, you can get that done with Copilot. Data analysis and visualization. This is a very powerful element. If you have workbooks in Excel, Copilot is enabled in Excel. So I think it's in the top right corner of Excel, you will see Copilot icon. If you press on it, Copilot chat box will come up, and you can work with Copilot and with your data at the same time. So you can query Copilot, could you do X, Y, and Z for me? Or I would like to create a formula that does X, Y, and Z. It's going to help you by analyzing your data. So it has that context information to help you. And really personal productivity and coaching. So you can, innovation strategy, you can ask it to help you. Business strategy, you can ask them to help you. Project plan, you can ask, it will help you, because it has access to the context information that's, for instance, in your SharePoint. So you can just reference documents into your prompt, write a prompt correctly, and ask it to help you. In terms of challenges, the big thing is obviously there are sometimes generic or inaccurate responses. So that's something you have to be careful. Sometimes if you over rely on the AI. I suppose the key here, from my perspective, is providing the context, whether these are documents or just the proper description of your prompt. And really, again, prompt is your king. If you write your prompt the right way, you can expect to get the right results, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't verify that. And the last, which is one of the biggest really for companies, is the data privacy and security concerns. And this is something that every business has to look at before they deploy any AI tool, whether it's in experimentation phase or on the large scale. And the last bit, time savings is your biggest benefit in drafting documents, creating emails, etc. It boosts your creativity, generate ideas, support of the projects, and so on. Context-aware recommendations, because it's integrated with your SharePoint of your specific documentation. You can work with that information. And obviously, the big thing, if you find your perfect prompt and you know it works all the time, you can save it in your library of prompts. So I think the takeaway from this, from me for you, is if you get those slides, have a look at this slide. In the top right corner, you can see that image of samples of what you can do. Just try it in your Copilot. If you have Office 365 subscription, you have that enabled. Let's just give it a go and see what it gives you.
Yeah. No, listen, I think this slide alone, Jacob, and thanks for that, is probably the most relevant, because that's, as we learned from our earlier surveys, this is where people are sort of starting on their AI journey, sort of dabbling in ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini and what have you. And I'm on that journey as well, and the team here in Clerkin are sort of layering our way through it. And it was funny, just last night, you know, obviously, and full disclosure, I obviously used it to help prepare this slide deck, but it asked me in ChatGPT for a connection into all of my other sources, my Outlook, my SharePoint, and I was like, oh, right, I'm not sure I want to do that just yet. But yeah, that's essentially what Copilot does, and I think that's probably one of the, I suppose, the risks around AI, that access to your data and where that data then can go. And you put so much trust in these companies because there's access to so much now. And I think that's probably going to be a step for people as well. And so that takes us on to our last sort of section, and it's a very good segue into what you ended with. Again, thanks very much for that, Jacob. Very, very insightful. So it's around the whole concept of AI aversion. That is sort of a growing, not phenomenon, but a growing concern or risk that people are sort of seeing. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. You're going to jump back into your app, okay, in case you thought you were done for the day. So okay, so I'm going to ask the question now very simply. So it's a sliding scale. So I'll give you a few minutes. When you receive or view content, which you're getting all the time now, be it on your social media feeds or in emails or even in WhatsApp, when you receive or view content that you know has largely been generated using AI, how do you feel? What is your impression of it? Okay, keep an eye on the bottom two bars, which is sort of very relevant to what's coming next. So we've half of our viewers in. Okay, so as the last few vote in, not changed much. My look at that is there's a moderate to high level of skepticism or devaluing the content. That's what that's sort of saying. So there's a marginally less likely to read or fully engage with the content. You do feel a little bit of skepticism around it, and the value of whatever's on it, even though it could be completely accurate, is somewhat reduced in your own head. So just keep that in mind when we sort of talk about the next few things. And again, this is the balance that the companies and individuals more so have to be mindful of as they sort of go on their AI journey using the language models that Jacob has just touched on. Okay, so next question. So how formal is your company's approach then to AI use in terms of how is it actually governed? So is there formal policy in place, informal, or is it nothing? It's just the Wild West and everybody sort of figure it out themselves? Okay. Okay, so that's quite interesting. More often, more than not, there's very informal or a lack of a policy in place, which when you consider both the advantages, I suppose there should in many ways be a push to use it and adopt it, but in a controlled way. There's still a long journey to go. Okay, I'm just going to go back into a couple of slides before I give the last few surveys. So again, AI aversion, if you haven't heard it. Okay, this barrier some people are talking about between trust in AI and continued adoptions. What is it? That growing phenomenon, tendency for people to distrust or undervalue content once they know it was generated by AI, even when the content itself is accurate and useful. So again, why it happens? There's perceived lack of judgment. Okay, so the human judgment. The concerns that's not authentic. You know, is it hallucination is a term that's coming up, or AI slop was something I heard referenced in all of the, especially where the imagery and videos that are popping up on our feeds. You know, it's this query of whether it's real or not, and the minute you think that it potentially might be fake, you just switch off from it. There's fear of hidden errors or bias. And then there's job or identity anxiety. Is this actually a negative thing that I'm seeing here? So you just have a sense of a feeling, well, this just might be wrong. What's the impact? You know, the quality of work is dismissed or undervalued once involvement is revealed. And I'm going to show you a case study now in a minute how that's at a very high level, how that is played out. Teams then may hide its use. You know, people sort of are, as they start using AI, they're sort of almost looking over their shoulder and sort of thinking, God, is this, it feels like cheating. What took me half a day now is taking me 10 minutes. But yet they're almost hooked into doing it. I know somebody I spoke to them now recently, they struggle to write their own emails now. They'll write a few prompts or a few words, they'll throw it into language model and write it out for them and think this is great. And I says, yeah, just be careful of that. Okay, because you know, that's a slippery slope potentially as well, because emails, there is a personal aspect to it, and authenticity that people would require from it. So you could be undermining your communications. And again, adoption slows. Okay, so if that trust issue is there, you might struggle to get people to further adopt it and use it to the value that Jakub and Mark has talked about. And client confidence risk, again, reduces trust in deliverables or communications. That's a big one. I'm just going to jump to the slide around a case study. Some of you may have heard about it when we came out last week. So it was Delight. Again, I can quite share it here because it's in the news. It's not something that's not readily available. And a partial refund over an AI-generated report in Australia. Okay, they were commissioned, like a lot of the big four are, to commission a lot of state reports and feasibility studies, the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations. Contract was $440,000 US dollars, which is about $250,000 US dollars, that's Australian dollars. So after publication, it was called out essentially. Critics flagged numerous errors, you know, citations to non-existent papers, fabricated quotes, if you can imagine, and misattributed professors and phantom reference. Anyway, so again, a few things were found out about it, and the whole thing was called into question. Again, essentially they were called out on it. It was admitted that generative AI was used and part of the methodology, and essentially, cut long story short, they had to basically refund a sizable chunk of the project fee. And you'd imagine that's quite embarrassing, but at the same time, not something, if we've been honest, that a lot of companies at the minute couldn't be similarly called out on, because I'm seeing it, and I'm sure a lot of you out there are seeing an awful lot of tender documents coming in that you get a sense that, right, well, we know that that's been sort of thrown through a language model, and us ourselves have sent stuff out in formal or informal capacity that might have been heavily done and thought it was great and nobody would cop on. But we have to be really, really, really mindful that things have moved on significantly in the last number of months, literally at the pace of which things have been adopted. And there's a good example, as you're going to see, and I think you're going to see more of that. I actually spoke to not a client, just an associate in the industry as an MME contractor. I'm certainly going to mention their name, and they were telling me how they lost a tender with a big engineering firm in Dublin recently, and I just asked them. I was a bit disappointed by it because it was a big job for the company. And I said, well, what happened? He said, well, basically, Dick, he says they came back and said that the content was too generic. They got the sense that it was generated in ChatGPT, and he said, well, it was, if I'm being honest. And even though the content was bang on and stacked up, they just felt it lacked authenticity. So I think it's something we definitely have to be very mindful in terms of that balance. And I suppose just on that to finish, so how do you do that? I think there's an element that we need to start very quickly risk assessing our the use cases for AI adoption. And this is very simplistic. But based on what I've read over the last number of weeks and what and that's what we try to do is to try to read and learn and impart some of that. There are certain things and tasks, many of which have been spoken about today, that they're low risk insofar as fill your boots. So AI is seen as very efficient for repetitive admin or data analytic type tasks. There's no real massive risk to the business or individuals by adopting it. Others where there's the task complexity is quite high, or there's a high impact on the business, but yet there's maybe not a high level of authenticity or personalization required. There's a moderate risk around that the tools are definitely been seen as beneficial, but there would be an element of professional judgment and oversight. So I would put the drone health and safety one, Jakub, in that sort of box, because yes, there's one thing about getting a sort of overview, but when it comes to health and safety, can we really rely simply on a drone to do a health and safety check? Because will that stand up in court if there's an accident and you're relying on a drone? I'm not so sure. That'll probably be tested out in time soon. So these are the sort of things about how far we go. Similarly, around something that requires a high level of authenticity and personalization, but it's low risk. You're just sort of taking the balance. But then the high risk ones, stuff that we know, taking the delight case, or stuff that we're sending out representing the company, be it a tender submission, a thought piece. There's an awful lot of stuff on the internet now and on LinkedIn, thought papers and blogs that you just know that somebody's churned it through. I found myself, I don't read past the second line once I've seen the few tells. So why go to the bother? And I think there's a value or premium going to be put again on authenticity and personalization. I think it's to be mindful. So as we use it and send stuff out, how's it going to be viewed if we're accepting now, both based on our poll earlier, that there's a good chance that it'll be viewed negatively, because that's what we're seeing at the minute. Okay, so I think there's a last couple of surveys just to see where we are going forward, if you want to jump back in. So if your biggest concern about using AI in your organization, so again, single word answers here, try and see what the common themes are. Security. Yeah, I can attest to that. As I say, last night when I was asked to give access to all my sort of worldly possessions on my PC, I just had to say no. So I had to say I'd have to go and do a wee bit more dive and trust, authenticity. Yeah. And like, I gave you an example last night. Like whilst people are putting in there, you talk about security. So completely off topic, but the fastest rise in crime now is cybercrime, not somebody coming through your front door. It's cybercrime, somebody accessing your data. I myself had to still follow up and realize that I got €500 taken out of my bank account 2 weeks ago through some bogus not WhatsApp account, Revolut account, and not sure I'll be able to do much, but I know that probably somewhere on my laptop and a safe, secure file, probably that's slack on my own part, there's password information or there's something there. And if I just link that between ChatGPT and all of that, where could that end up going? So I would be very, very reticent from that security. And again, that's the biggest thing there as well. So we have to be very, very careful what we're giving people access to. Okay, very good. And the last one before we let people go, we're just about bang on time. So how ready do you feel your organization is to adopt AI both effectively and responsibly? So keeping in mind the last section. Okay. Okay, so I think that's going to be fairly representative as people come in. So there's work to do, as you'd imagine. But I suppose as well, Paul, I'll pull you back in maybe just to close this on behalf of the membership, that, you know, as MMC states, modern methods of construction, we arguably should be ahead of the broader construction industry in the adoption and readiness of this. So I think it shows even within our industry we've a long way to go. But again, AI in its rollout is still very much in its infancy, albeit, you know, some of the use cases that we've seen are hugely impressive. There's a long journey to go, but I think there's something in today's, Paul. I do think in terms of we might have thought we were further ahead than we were, but there's a lot of companies there are still sort of learning the way, and we, I suppose, as our role as working groups and to try and feed back into members is that there is something there in terms of the risk and the awareness of the rollout. So it's balancing that opportunity versus the risk and the investment required. So I think it was very beneficial. Huge thanks to Jakub and Mark. If we've any questions, jump them in. I'll just let Paul maybe sign off. I don't think there's much come in, but if there is, we can feed them back and we can follow up them.
Just thanks a lot, Dick. Just a huge thanks to yourself, Mark and Jakub. I mean, I think you certainly hit the brief around educating, and I definitely leave more learned than I joined. I think the results of your surveys to me made perfect sense. I know there's a difference between your personal use of AI, whether it be ChatGPT or Copilot, and company uses of AI, particularly when you look at what Cairn are doing, whether it be through the drones or the 360 cameras from health and safety, etc. I think that's fascinating, and I hadn't seen that before. And whether your point around the accuracy of whether something is compliant or not from health and safety, the least it does is highlight an area that needs to be investigated. So I think that's hugely beneficial. And data security around that is less of an issue. Data security around your own personal information is much more of an issue. Companies I've seen and what they're working on, I think, and this is commonly known, the take-up is exponential. And I think this time next year, the results of your same survey will certainly be a lot further. We'll all be a lot further down the road of AI adoption. So thanks again, Dick. Thanks a lot, Mark. Thanks, Jakub. I found it fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so I'm going to sign off with that again. Just a final thanks to Jakub and Mark. And any questions, don't hesitate to follow back up directly. There'll be a quick survey been pinged out. We're always keen to gauge the feedback on how well we presented these, the value for members, and try and keep them rolling out, because we're going to have another one, if not two, before Christmas. So for me, I just want to say a huge thank you, and thanks for staying with us. We had a good attendance again today and stayed the course. So again, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye now.